Hey everyone, welcome back to our 2 p.m. session, How to Scale a Business with Piada COO Lance Juhas. Lance will share how Piada adapted to COVID, what changes will be permanent for the business model, and what you need to have in place when you think about scaling and going national on this fireside chat. Lance will be joined by moderator Will Foster. Will is the founder of Picnk, a meal prep startup that delivers local meals fresh to customers on a weekly cycle. Will is also a Dayton ambassador for Lululemon, and when he's not working, he enjoys running, weightlifting, and you can always find him supporting our local taco establishments. Please remember to submit your questions for the Q&A in the app. You can get to there by navigating to your home screen and then clicking Session Q&A and selecting the session. From there, your questions will get submitted to the moderator. And you can do that anytime during the session. You don't have to wait for the Q&A session to start. And with that, I'll let Will take it away.
Thanks, John. Great to see you, Lance. How you doing today?
Great, man. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. Before we get into the scaling and COVID challenges, if you could share a little bit about your background with Piada and what brought you to the company.
Sure. Piada, I started years ago in the business, but about 20 years ago, I started with Bravo Burrito Restaurant Group. At that time, it was owned by two brothers, Rick and Chris Duty. Chris owns the majority of Piada. So about 4 years ago, Chris called me out of the blue, asked if I was interested in looking at fast casual. I'd never looked at fast casual. I'd always been in casual dining. And, at that time, I was starting to look out to see what else was out there. And I said, sure, I'll take a look at it. And, I'd visited Piada prior because I live in Centerville. And I knew about the way Chris was with quality, the way he was with taking care of the guests. So I met him at the Kettering location, and we talked a lot about, the past and then the future. And really, I was intrigued with the fast casual. If that's where the industry was kind of leaning. The opportunity came about to say, they asked me if I wanted to join the team, and I said, sure, why not? I mean, I was already starting to look, and it's been great. The past 4 years have been a challenge. COVID has been a challenge, but we've learned a lot, and I think the industry has learned a lot, which is super exciting. But the thing about Chris Duty is I would probably follow him to his next concept if he ever does another one, or stay here. But Chris is a great guy. He loves taking care of the guests and what have you. And I believe in that also. It's all about genuine hospitality and great food, and that's why I'm with Piada.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. I mean, a good leadership is everything, and someone you can work with and trust. And you're a great company. You guys have a good reputation, and obviously grown quite a bit in the area. So, what challenges arose? It's already hard enough to run a food, food, as you know. So when COVID hit, what was some of the immediate challenges that you faced, and then long term challenges that maybe you're still facing?
Yeah, the immediate challenge was twofold. Number one, was sales. There were sales. How are we going to continue to run the company with most of the sales being 50% of the sales dropped off the day of the quarantine, and then the other side was, how are we going to take care of our team? How are we going to take care of the team members, our managers, our chefs, and really even the home office? What are we going to do? And the good thing is that we were already starting on a pretty strong platform when it comes to technology. We had just made the decision. We have an app, right? But we had just made the decision actually in December to revamp our app. So our director of technology was going to head up the iOS, and we actually hired a gentleman, a friend of his, to head up building for Android, because you can't do both at the same time. You have to build one and build the other. So we were already in the midst of planning that. Now, again, I said planning that. It wasn't, it was, boom, what are we going to do? So really it was about how can we A, stay afloat, B, generate more sales, and C, get the things done that we need to get done in order for us to be successful, because none of us knew how long this was going to be.
Yeah.
And I think the number one thing that really saved us and really kept us strong through the whole pandemic, and even at the beginning and even now, is our the way we manage cash.
Yeah.
And I believe that, I know that is what saved us and really kept us where we are. A lot of people, a lot of companies, they run their business based off of their income statement, right? If your sales are there, hey, just keep spending. But a lot of people are not cash conscious and know how much cash they really have. Because once the pandemic hit, sales were cut in half. You didn't have that net sale. You didn't have that. The bank was going to have just as much of difficulty getting cash as you were. So we were very disciplined when it came to cash. And so we didn't falter. Our sales weren't there, but we were able to pay our bills, make deals with landlords based off of our sales at that point, and we just kept working every day to get ourselves ready to come out of the pandemic, or at least come out of the lock-in. So really, it was all really technology based. We had a great, with the cash. Technology is what really saved us. It was you couldn't come in the restaurant and sit down, right? And really, you couldn't come in the restaurant in the beginning and even order through online. We had a great relationship with DoorDash already established, and our online feature. I want to go back. I mean, you couldn't come in and stand in line and order right in the beginning, right? But our OLO, our online feature, was really strong. So you could do curbside, and we could have guests walk in, pick their stuff up, and then come out. So that really helped us in the beginning, and really has helped us through that entire piece. So and even now, I mean, our sales on the online and delivery and being able to walk in and order versus sit down has surpassed pre-pandemic numbers, which has been great. Has been fabulous. I think we may have lost him. We may have lost him.
Yeah, we did lose Will. His screen froze. He's hopping back in now.
That's all right. No worries.
It's not the first time you've had a screen freeze in our virtual conference.
Happens every day at this point.
Would you like to just keep going on the point you were making, and we'll get Will back here in a second?
Sure. I think going forward, the industry, everything that you read on the publications and the trades, everybody is vying for the technology. You have curbside. A lot of restaurants were already doing curbside. We decided to do curbside right out of the gate. We had already started talking about it. We have 5 locations that have pickup windows, so we had the ability to have guests order online and for those 5 restaurants, and come pick up their lunch or their dinner through the pickup windows. Our culinary team got together, and we built a bunch of take-home options for family meals. So we had some take and bakes, so you could get a pasta in a pan with a salad in a pan. The salad, of course, didn't go in the oven, but the pasta could go back in the oven, heat it up for a little while, for a little bit, and then feed your family. So that was, we turned to do things that would take care of an entire family. And really, with the pickup window and the curbside and even the take and bake or the family options, I think for everyone in the industry has made everybody think again, even about real estate. The cool thing about coming out of some of the COVID, quarantine, is I've been on some trips to Dallas because we're looking to grow, and there's not a lot of restaurants that are there aren't a lot of restaurants that are growing. You see a lot that are unfortunately closing, and we're hopping on the opportunity to open up some new locations. Well, that being said, we've had to redo our entire real estate strategy. We wouldn't think about putting a drive-through in a year ago, right? Maybe a pickup window, but not a drive-through. Well, we're thinking, now that we look for locations, we're like, hey, broker, we need a drive-through in this location. There has to be a drive-through. You either have one already there on that site, or the zoning we have to have the ability to maybe put one in with the zoning. And so we're actually testing in 3 weeks in our Mason location, our first drive-through. They have a pickup window. Like I said, you can order online and click, I'll get it from the pickup window, but we're actually going to have a tent out front. We don't have the ability to put the electronics in, like if you went to Starbucks or McDonald's with the microphone and all that, but we will have somebody outside, like the Chick-fil-A, to take your order and have you drive up through. So we're going to test that in 3 weeks to see how that does. Okay. But it is going to change the face of the industry. If you read, like I read this morning in one of the trades about a fine dining restaurants that are going to do drive-through. Okay, that's different. Put a tablecloth in your lap, go sit out in the parking lot, have your dinner there. But it's made everyone think twice about the things that they said that they would never try. Yeah. Now they would say, oh, I think I'm going to try that. I think we might have to try that. Because the dine-in, our dine-in right now is only at 14%. That is a guest walking through the front door, ordering in our queue, in our line, and sitting at one of our tables and dining. Our carry-out, which is someone doing the same thing, except they walk out the front door, that's right around 45% of our business right now, but it's up 20% versus prior years' times. Okay. So that's been a godsend also of guests coming in and being able to leave. But it's really about embracing the technology at this point.
It's amazing how you guys have adapted, and also how creative, our fellow, industry people have adapted. It's fascinating. And some of those changes that you mentioned, maybe it was a project you were already working on, and it made it your priority, and move things up the list. So yeah, it's amazing what people have done and what you guys have done over there at Piada. So I want to talk too, as we get into scaling. Startup Week's great, and you get a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, but not everybody has a specific business background. I am in business, and I don't have a business degree, and so if you could share with the group here the difference between scaling and growth, something that is very important, and a lot of people maybe might not know the difference or even think about.
Right. Well, I think in the scaling, when we look at our business, so I was thinking about this the other day. I have some friends, some guys in New York New York City that I started a bar with. I bought into a bar with them, and then a restaurant, and it was totally different than when you're using your own money. Yeah. Than being having the backing of a corporation, or really even having the backing of multiple restaurants that are producing capital, producing cash for you to have the ability to spend. And I think that is the thing when you're thinking about starting your business, and you're thinking about where is that location going to be? What's the best location? What's my menu? What do I want to get at? The thing you always have to remember is that you are ultimately responsible from the start to the end. And I mean, that is paying for the bills of whatever you're bringing in. If it's a restaurant, you're paying the produce guy. Because out of the gate, the produce guy is not going to give you credit. If you're starting out of the first time startup, it's going to be a check. It's going to be cash. And the hard thing is everybody thinks the restaurant business is easy. And what people don't think about is you pay everybody before you pay yourself. And if you don't have the ability to say have a year's or 6 months worth of savings that you are not going to touch, so you can pay your own bills or take care of your family, because starting a restaurant or any business, working for yourself, taking care of your guests or your customers is so fulfilling. The hard part is if you don't know where you're going to get the dollar every day, because your employees also look to you for their ability to pay for their own bills and their families. So I think it's really, Will, it's sitting down with a pen and paper and really thinking about where you think you'll be in a sales position, and really talking to the either owners or managers of businesses that are in the area that you're looking for, because they will tell you the truth, right? They will tell you, hey, it's great here at lunch, but dinner is dead, right? I was just in Dallas looking for locations, and we happened to talk to a general manager for a sandwich place. And we thought this location, it's busy, traffic was crazy during lunch, during dinner. And so we were looking at a spot next door to him, and he came out and he started talking to us, and we were like, we asked him, hey, what's business like? He goes, oh man, lunch is great. Dinner's dead. And you can see it with the parking lot, sort of, but does your area that you want to go to make sense? Do you understand a lease? Remember, you sign a lease. The hard part nowadays is that most landlords don't go for a 5-year lease anymore. If you're signing for a lease, they go for a 10-year lease. Yeah. And you have to remember, you are signing for 10 years of payments on X box that you're going into, and it is on you. And do you believe, or does your business model that you put together, do you think that that's going to work? And so, having conversations with individuals, how what is the CAM, right? People don't think about that. You think about, what's the lease amount, what's your rent obligation, right? So your rent might be, let's just say it's $1,000 a month, right? And so if you think you're going to do X in sales, maybe your rent's only 5% of your total sales, which would be great, right? Yeah. That would be great if it was 5%. But what they don't tell you is the triple N. And so the triple N is CAM. So CAM is common area maintenance. So if you're in a strip mall, everybody pays into a pool to cut the grass, get the plowing done, put in new flowers, cleaning up, taking out the garbage. Some places the garbage. Sometimes you're responsible for that. It's real estate taxes and insurance. So those are things that you don't always we don't always think about. You could pay $35 a square foot in rent, but your triple N might be $15 a square foot. Well, now you're paying $50 versus the 35 that you thought you were paying. Yeah. And so it's really understanding how long can you go as an individual with maybe not paying yourself. Because the first couple of years in a restaurant, just because, and really any business, but the restaurants are so volatile because you're dealing with perishable products.
There's a lot of moving pieces, yeah.
A lot of moving pieces, as you know,
Yeah.
right? There's perishable products, and not knowing right out of the gate what's going to be the best, the best item on your menu to sell. Really important. If you're putting a menu together, don't bring in everything under the sun to make all these different products, right? All these different dishes. Be creative.
Nightmare just to get the supply chain and to
Right.
get it all together. Yeah.
Right. You be creative and look at your menu and say, okay, if I'm going to bring in, or I'm going to make pickled red onions, how many dishes can I put pickled red onions in, right? Because if you only use it for one dish and that dish never sells, are you going to reprint your menu, spend more money? Are you going to just get rid of the red onions or pickled red onions and say, this just doesn't work, but guests ask for it at some point, we don't have that item anymore. Having multiple uses for items is great, right? Because the more, remember, inventory on hand is cash out of the bank.
Yeah.
Even though you have it.
Yeah.
It's cash out of the bank. And again, it's the stressing of scaling is how much cash do you need to pay everybody and then pay yourself, and start thinking about in the future, where can I go for my next location? And that's all about the success week in and week out, right? Every week you compare yourself to last week, and then you go into the next year, you compare yourself to last year. And if you're getting better and you're putting cash in the bank, remember, 2 restaurants are much better than 1 when it comes to cash flow, hopefully, if you're picking the right spots. But it really, it comes down to cash. Because in my own venture, we opened a bar to open up a restaurant. And it was in Brooklyn, New York. The bar did great. The restaurant was good, but it didn't make any cash.
Yeah.
And we used all the cash from the bar to pay for the restaurant, and instead of dipping into our own funds, because that's where sometimes, you get into a bind of when you start dipping into your retirement fund, your kids' college fund, your whatever fund it is that you have. When you start taking out to fund the business, and you're still struggling, there always has to be cash discipline out of the gate, and kind of know where your breaking point is, and that's tough.
Yeah.
It is tough.
Cash flow is everything. Anybody that listens to me, I tell them, it's absolutely everything. And it's a balance, time is money, but also it depends on the situation. In our early days, I go to GFS, to buy whatever. Well, you know what? I'd love to just get 4 more cans of these so I don't have to come back next week and do it, and to get it, and it'll save me some time. Well, there's $2,000 in the bank account and I need $1,800 for rent, and that's due tomorrow, and that extra can brings it down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? Time is money. But I'm just going to have to come back and get it next week, because
Right.
if I pile that up front and now I don't have cash, I can't pay my bills, and so it's this really fine balance between sometimes, you do have to do things that take more time until you're able to get to that point. And, between the lease and cash flow, risk is involved in every, aspect of it. So how do you, when you're looking at a situation, how do you evaluate the risk? We want to take calculated risks, but what are things that you look at? And you can give a specific example if you want, or kind of an overview. I'm just curious.
So I'm looking. So I'll just say for Piada, right? I'm looking at a site in Dallas that is not a normal site for us. It is on the back end of a building, so you don't see us from the main road. The main road is super busy. If you've ever been to Dallas, it's in the Addison area, and it is on, of course, the street name is flown out of my head at this point. But anyway, the center has on one street 84,000 views per day.
Wow.
So it comes off a 75, and then there's so much traffic that goes in between the two, gets 85,000 views a day. So however they figure that out.
Yeah.
Well, when I looked at the center, I'm like, oh, this is great. there's a Shake Shack on the corner. There's a Flower Child at a freestanding, which is another restaurant company. There's a Chipotle that's on the front end of the building. 2 mom and pops. We have the ability to take the back end, which is right now a local deli sandwich shop. And then Jenny's is looking at going next to Shake Shack. And actually they've signed. And then Mendocino Farms, which is out of California, which is a fast casual. They do a lot of catering, is going in behind us. Now this is an old complex that a new landlord bought, and they're revamping the entire thing. Right, it's an old service merchandise that'll date you on how old the place is. It's going to look beautiful. We would never, as Piada, say, okay, let's do a spot on the back end of a building, because yes, somebody can see one side coming from the west when they're going home to see your building. But, so here's the risk. The risk is signing the lease for 10 years. Even though this is Piada, right? Even though we have 40 restaurants, it doesn't mean that we want to not be successful in the location. We want them all to make money so we can continue to grow. But with the co-tenancy of that complex, am I willing to say, all right, we're going to roll the dice on this one. We're going to sign a 10-year lease, even though we're going to take the back end of this building where you can't really see us up front. We still have co-tenancy that's going to corner us. They have to look over and be curious about what is Piada, right? And so then down, across town, I have a spot, boom. It's right on a busy corner. It's next to a Chipotle. You see us from the road. Again, it's busy. One street has 40,000 views. The other street has 50,000 views. And it's a little more expensive. It's a little cheaper, a little less expensive. But I totally have to build it out. It's just a shell. So I have to think, okay, what my cash going in is going to be to do the build out, to build it, versus a second generation that already has a grease trap, already has I know it's got enough power. I know it already has an air conditioning unit. The landlord will give me a little bit of TI, but I know maybe the sales, because I'm on the corner and you can see me and it's pretty, but the co-tenancy over here, will that make me sign a deal that, number one, is more expensive in rent? And the risk is, when you go and look at a property, does the co-tenancy make sense for you? Right? Does it make sense for you? If you go and look at a strip mall and it has a nail salon that does not look like it's great, or a foot massage parlor, and it has a bunch of empty windows in the storefront, you watch the traffic on the corner, and I would suggest you go at night, whatever your business is, especially if it's a restaurant, you go at lunch, you go at dinner, and you watch the traffic. And if it's busy, and the restaurants on the corner, if there's restaurants on the corner and there's good traffic, and you're looking at this center going, man, it does not look super pretty, but there's good access in, there's good access out, it's ease to get in, and the rent is good with the N, it might be worth the risk.
Okay.
So and it might be worth the risk paying a little bit more if you look around and say, man, there's a XYZ here, there's a Jenny's here, there's a this there, I'm going to go to my CEO. I'm actually going to drag my CEO and sit in a car with him and drive him down there. And I'm going to put my arm around him and say, what do you think? And he's going to see the back end of the building. He already knows it's back end. And is that risk for us worth it? And I believe it is. I believe with the co-tenancy it is. And so, you might look at a strip mall that you don't think is worth it because of the tenancy. But if you see traffic and restaurants are doing well, or whatever business you're in is going to do well, it might be worth that risk.
when you're making these decisions too, you know, you obviously make a lot of big decisions for the company in your position, but I'm sure you have a team that you work with, you know, through the transition process and all that. You know, and we're nothing without our team, nothing at all.
Right.
And so when you're evaluating the risk and scaling and everything, you know, what do you look for? Not in a team, but maybe when you're building your team, like specific individuals. You know, what are traits, you know, that you look for? I personally, the general, you know, professionalism and you know, some sort of education and related, you know, but I always look for like emotional intelligence personally. You know, how are you going to handle difficult situations? Because they're going to happen every single day. And we have enough to stress about in life. And so I don't usually spend too much time on things that don't matter too much, you know, otherwise you'd be upset all the time. So that would be one of my biggest things. But what do you look for in an individual?
So I would say the emotional intelligence is a big one, you know, because you're going to be in a room with individuals that you have to have, you're going to at some point have to have some real conversations. And it can get testing. I mean, it can get, I don't want to say ugly, but it can get uncomfortable. And even with people that you've known for a long time, right? It can get uncomfortable. My rule of thumb, though, is surround yourself with people that are smarter than you.
Yeah.
So I surround myself with people that are smarter than me. And what I mean by that is, you know, my multi-unit individuals who are out in the field, you know, I want individuals who understand the business as well, if not better than I do, right? I may have to make the $50,000 decision, you know, but they're the ones that have they have the feet on the ground, right? I look for individuals, say I'm going to look for a property. I'll take my director of construction with us, because I'm not going to go look at a property. I might go look at a property and go, well, golly gee, this place is beautiful. You know, it's pretty on the outside. It's a good shell. Hey, Lance, it doesn't have a grease trap. It doesn't have the gas that we need coming in, and it doesn't have, you know, he goes directly to the electrical panel. Yeah. And he'll go, it doesn't have enough electricity to do what we need it to do, and it's going to cost us X to do that. And I'll look at him and go, and God brought you. Yeah. Because I could have said, man, it's so pretty and what have you. And the broker's going, yeah, you know, it looks really good. Yeah, I can see you here. And they give you a pretty picture with Piada on it. And you're like, oh, wow, yeah. And he's going to look at me and go, smack me in the back of the head and go, hey, let's move on to the next site. Right. And so, you know, even when it comes to people, you know, taking care of your people is number one. You know, it is really tough right now in any industry to find great people. Yeah. And team members. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about chefs and salaried folks, but also team members. Yeah. And what I also look for, William, is I look for individuals who are super passionate about their job and are super passionate about things that they do outside of work, right? Because then I know that will translate into what they're going to do in the job. But I look for individuals who are really, really, they understand the black and white SOP. So, you know, doing everything law-abiding that you cannot, you know, you've got to do all the black and white stuff. How do they do in the gray area? You know, because there's always gray. Yeah. And then, most importantly, while they hold everyone accountable to the same standard, if it's punctuality, what have you, they talk to everybody and they manage everybody a little bit differently. So back in my old days, when I was a multi-unit for Bravo, I had a gentleman who was the GM of the Dayton Bravo when we were at the old location. And he was a stickler for the rules. You know, if you were a cook and you were late, you know, for your shift, and it wasn't in a good, you know, didn't have a doctor's note or what have you, you know, at first he'd have a conversation with you. Second, he'd follow the documentation process. He would do that for a bartender, server, hostess, you name it. The teaching and coaching method, though, was he would sit down and talk to the cook differently just because of who the cook was than he would the server. just because who that person was. So and I find that individuals who they hold everybody accountable to the way everybody should be held accountable.
Yeah.
But they manage every individual a little bit differently. Yeah. They don't let them slide, but they put their arm around them. They talk to him differently. And he was super successful. And I think anybody that does that is welcome on my team, because we are all different. We all respond to things differently. Yeah. So that's huge for me.
Yeah, that's great advice too. I want to mention too, we have 10 minutes for everyone watching. So if there's any questions, you can submit them through the app, and we'll take a few here in a second. I have a couple that have already come through. I have one final question for you before we get into the group questions, and then a couple just quick speed round questions for you. Okay. But what has been your biggest failure that you would consider, and what did you learn from it? The most challenging thing that you've experienced?
My biggest failure, honestly, was there's two. Taking things in whatever job that you do personally. Yeah. I've taken things personally. I don't really anymore, but I've taken things personally in business situations which it handcuffed me for a while. And what I mean by that is I would just take it personally. If somebody was having just having a conversation with me about things that I was not doing correctly, or things in my region or area that weren't going well, I took that very personally. And it hinders you to now lift yourself up and lift your team up and move forward. And really also not owning up to when you make a mistake and trying to put it on someone else. Yeah. Listen, it's asking for forgiveness and then moving forward and getting better and learning from the mistake that you made is the greatest thing in the world. And I would early in my career, I would not that I wouldn't own up to it, I would make an excuse for it. Yeah. And you just can't do that. You can't. Yeah.
These things happen. I've dealt with both of those issues, in my career. And to touch base on that, somewhere along the way, I was like, I don't ever lose. I either win or I learn. And I started to look at it that way, and then I would have some challenging experiences and some tough ones, and it's emotional intelligence, focus on the solution. I don't like focusing on the problem too long. That exists. It's not going away. What are we gonna? I don't even want to spend 2 minutes talking about it. So.
And I've learned from that. It's funny. I was having a conversation with someone last week, and I was telling them, listen, you cannot take this personally. And I'm thinking to myself, I've heard this before. I've heard this somewhere before. Yeah. Somebody's saying this to me, and I'm like, it's not personal. It is not personal. Yep. And because you forget about the business once that happens.
Yes.
You think it's all you, and it's not. And so we don't do anybody any good.
If you hadn't learned that lesson, you wouldn't be the leader you are now and be able to pass that along to them. You know what I mean? Right. So it's very important to recognize that. So, I just 2 quick questions, and then we'll get to the questions here. What's your favorite go-to item? I'm sure you.
My favorite go-to item is the deluxe Caesar salad with salmon. That's my favorite go-to item.
Okay. And then you talked about work-life balance earlier. Any hobbies? I mean, what do you enjoy? What do you do to unwind?
So I used to run a lot. Okay. As you know, because we have a mutual friend.
I saw that.
Yeah. And so last year and a half, we don't run my wife and I don't run as many miles. She's run Boston a couple times. I've run 12 marathons. She's run 7. Okay. But we like to run together and cook. So and travel. We love to travel. Travel. So.
Everything disappears when you're out there. If you get to the trails on the roads, everything disappears. So, all right. Well, John is sending me a message here. So let's see what we got here. I don't have a name, but they say, thanks for sharing your wisdom, Lance. Speaking of scaling a business, does Piada have plans for any additional Dayton investments or expansions?
So nothing right now in Dayton. We are coming up on our lease in Centerville. To the end. We will stay in Centerville. We'll either stay at the location we're at or try to find something else. but nothing as of right now in Dayton. And yes, we are thinking about expanding. I was in Dallas a couple weeks ago. Dallas is a great market for us. Texas has been very good. Dallas is so big. We only have 5 locations right now there. We have about 4 sites that we like. We won't do all 4 of them. We'll do maybe a couple. And then Columbus, which we're based out of, we're trying to get Westerville to approve a corner to get built up so we could go there. But yes, we are on. We want to expand, of course, for sure.
Excellent. All right. Another one here. What are some things you have done to overcome fear, whether internal or externally motivated, early on in business?
Taking the chance. And the fear of failure will only keep you from trying what you want to try, right? And I do that in my personal life, and I do that in my professional life. Being on a call like this may not be scary for some people, but it might be really frightening for others. I remember when I didn't like to talk to in a group setting, and the fear of overcoming that. Now it's just like, no big deal. So just facing that fear. If you fail, big deal, big deal. I've had failures years ago in my past life. I tried something at a restaurant. It was super successful for sales. But man, we crapped the bed when it came to everything else. We couldn't get food out to our guests who were inside the restaurant. We couldn't do it. My boss called me the next day and I said, well, I'll never try that again. Yeah. But I did it. And I was afraid. I was afraid that was going to happen. So.
Well, you can learn a lot from failure. I would, if someone had a business and they failed and that's all I knew, right? I would probably still hire them, what I mean? Because they probably learned a lot, they had a lot of experiences and, you can definitely. Failure is not connected to your ability to do a job, and I know some successful, intelligent people whose businesses have failed, and there's so many things out of your control. So it looks, let's see here, and then I just have a thank you for sharing your great information and love your perspective and wisdom. So from somewhere there. So all right, well, Lance, this has been great.
Appreciate it.
Any final thoughts from the crowd?
Don't be afraid to do what you want to do.
Awesome.
Remember. You'll be successful if you do what you love. Awesome. And that's what it's all about, loving what you're going to do. And if you want to work for yourself and you want to make others, you want to make something for others, then follow your passion. That's what I would.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. And I got to say,
pleasure.
You guys got me through college. So thanks for that. I lived at Piada over there in Beaver Creek. So
we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Keep coming. Keep coming.
Thank you both for joining us today and sharing some wisdom with our audience. We'll kick back up again at 3 o'clock with a fireside chat with Stephen Hightower, the founder of Hightower's Petroleum. So it's 3 o'clock. We'll start back up. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.